Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dusk Till Dawn, the podcast of Centrica's Diverse Ability Network, which is helping to share and spread awareness of multiple topics through fantastic guests. Now, I'm very excited this week because we have a super guest who goes by the name of Ross Gardner, who I'm very thankful for coming on, as I'm sure he has a lot to share. So, how are we doing, Ross?
I'm all right, Ed. It's an absolute privilege to be a part of this podcast. Thanks for having me.
No, brilliant. It's an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you. And first of all, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. As you know, the podcast tends to thrive off discussing relatively taboo topics. So, having the mindset to come on and comfortably discuss is massively, massively appreciated.
No, not a problem, Ed. Like you say, we've got to have the confidence to be able to talk about these topics. Like we've talked about before, if we don't discuss these topics, like you say, they stay stagnant and we don't really get dived right into them. So, really massive pleasure to be here.
Exactly, I couldn't agree more. If we just start off then with diving into what your current role at Centrica is and your motivation for joining the business.
Yeah, so I joined the business in 2007. My football career came to a bit of an abrupt end in the July 2007, and by the time of September of the 2007, I was on an apprenticeship as a UKI installation engineer. Motivation, do you know what? I was probably in a little bit of a dark place. There wasn't too much motivation. I just needed a job
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But I knew that primarily I was an outdoorsy type of person. I'd been in the football environment for a long time, and I thought, well, if I can still stay in that sort of environment, working outdoors and learning a trade, then that would be perfect for me and what I sort of wanted. Currently, I've actually now made the transition from being a UKI installation engineer, been doing that for 14 years, over to national technical support engineer. So I've just went through a transition period from working on the tools, and now I'm back at home now in the comforts of home living.
Yeah.
Testament to our flexibility plan here at Centrica, and it's really good. I get to help HSAs specify a boiler and make sure that everything's in the correct order for the UKI engineers getting there. So it helps just that customer journey, which is brilliant, and I really enjoy it.
That's fantastic to hear. It always helps working from home as well, doesn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. Like you say, there's some days like I can pick my daughter up from school. I can get that extra load of washing in
Yeah.
that the missus wants me to get in. So yeah, it's really good. I've really took to it really well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the washing, by the way. I always feel like it's the 5 minutes in between calls running, trying to chuck it all in and then just set it off and then get it
That's
out
it.
after a call.
You got to
Yeah.
get them brownie points in, definitely.
Yeah. My flatmate will listen to this and she'll be loving it. So happy days. But no, touching on being a UK9 installation engineer for 14 years, that is a long time. That's absolutely brilliant. Did you sort of portray yourself being in it for so long?
I didn't know what to expect early on. I just knew that, like I say, I needed a job, and British Gas were a top company. My dad, a real working class fella, he worked at Nissan up in the northeast. It's a massive part of our community up in the northeast, and he told me to get a trade, and I loved it. I loved interacting with customers, learning off more experienced engineers, then passing down the knowledge to me, and then I was to pass down the knowledge to other people coming through the business. I just loved the whole concept of it, and within a blink of an eye, 14 years had gone.
Yeah.
It's quite surreal to think about it, take a step back and think about it and reflect. The time has just went so quick, but I've had so many enjoyable times. It's just been brilliant.
Time flies when you're having fun. That's the
It's
typical saying, isn't it?
it certainly does. It certainly does.
But no, it's great to hear that you loved it. And I feel like when you deal with customers, it does, there is some customers that, aren't great to deal with, but for the ones that are, it does make it so much worth it, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I mean, especially for a UKI engineer, because usually we are on the same job for the day, or we have one job every 2 days. So the customers that we get to interact with, we could be with an elderly customer, and we finish the job, and the best time of the job for me is that ending up and finishing off, and sitting down having a cup of tea and there's a couple hours gone before you go home. Do you know what I mean? You're sitting down with
Yeah.
a customer and you're having a brew and a bit of cake, and you just think, this is why I do this. This is why I
Yeah.
really do this. It's amazing.
They're like the sort of the additional little extra perks of the job, aren't they?
Oh, they certainly are. Certainly
Yeah.
are.
So that's brilliant. So I guess that's one side of the coin, right? Your career at Centrica. So if we then flip that round, because I know you've got a hugely interesting other side of the coin when it comes to your career before Centrica, and I know you touched on it a little bit about sort of getting into football and being a really keen footballer.
Yeah.
Do you mind sort of going into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I had a professional football career from the years of 17-year-old till 22. Unfortunately, I got injured at 22 and had to come out the game, and that's when I came over to Centrica. Yeah, so from the age of 5, I just loved having a football at my feet. I'd sleep with it, I'd wake up with it, I'd be outside, destroying all the neighbours' quiet nights in because I'd be smashing it against the wall and stuff like that. But I had a talent for football, and I actually signed for Newcastle when I was 8 year old. Went to their centre of excellence and managed to work myself all the way up to 17 and signed my first professional contract there, which was brilliant because well, unfortunately, I'm a Newcastle fan. But yeah, signing for your hometown club and maybe having a career there was something that I'd always wanted from day dot. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Sort of end up that way because there was a few issues at Newcastle, which ultimately resulted in me moving to Nottingham Forest at the age of 17, and that's where I went on to make my football debut down there.
No, that's fantastic, and you know what? It is every person's dream. I feel like a lot of, especially young lads, just wanting to play football and be a professional footballer, but to get the chance to do it for the hometown club and the club that you support, it's honestly what dreams are made of, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is, and I had the added benefit of I was actually England captain as well from under
Yeah.
15s to under 20s, and I mean that was probably one of my biggest honours to lead the national team out and stuff like that. It was just the whole experience was amazing in football sense, but as we'll probably talk about it came with a few dark moments as well.
And I guess that's the next point that I wanted to dive into. You've got into football at 5. You've gone into playing at Newcastle, signing for them at a first professional contract with them before moving to Forest. But after that, what then happened? So I know you touched on an injury sort of ending things, but in a bit more detail, how did it end? Why did it end? And I guess how did you initially deal with going through all of that since it was such a big part of your life from an early age?
Yeah, so I've got a really addictive personality
Yeah.
ever since I was a young boy, and I became well, I was a gambling addict since the age of 15. I would always up in the northeast of England. I'd always go to the amusements in the summertime with my nana and granddad, and them 2 pence machines that you would put your 2 pence in, and
Yeah.
then they would push forward
Yeah.
and back, and then as soon as some 2 pence coins came out the bottom, all these lights would flash up, and I was just absolutely hooked. But unfortunately, I didn't realize that was the start of my journey to becoming a gambling addict. With having such a amount of money at such a young age, also a lot of time on my hands as well. A footballer's sort of life is you go into training on a morning, your breakfast is made for you, you go to training, you come out, your dinner's made for you, and then you go home,
Mm.
and then you've got all that time on your hands in the afternoon. And unfortunately for me, to fill that time, mine was spent in bookmakers and going to the horse racing and stuff like that, and that sort of was fine at the time because it wasn't a detriment to finances, to houses, the family I was with at that time. But coming towards the end of the football career and knowing that I had to make a new life for myself outside of that came to the forefront. So obviously my salary decreased quite substantially, and in the space of 2 months of being I was a footballer to joining British Gas, I then got a house repossessed as well.
Mhm.
My house that I bought when I was a footballer, and it just sort of started to, let's just say, the dark skies started to roll in. Then it was really difficult to sort of deal with. So if you can understand from a young lad's point of view, you're 8 year old, all you've ever known is football, and then at 22, that's it. You're not going to be able to do the thing that you love, or your body can't do that anymore. You feel a little bit of sort of injustice. and that's when my addiction really started to come through. I had a suicide attempt within a couple of months actually of joining Centrica, which was more of a cry for help. I took an overdose, and I was lucky to get to the QMC in Nottingham to have my stomach pumped, and I knew then there was sort of some issues, but I didn't want to deal with them back then, and then that's why it sort of developed into a full blown addiction later on in life.
I mean, you know, I'm in no place to dish out sort of my own life experience with this, but from thinking of it from a young lad's perspective, like you said, of having something that's all you've ever known, to then all of a sudden it being gone in an instant, and also almost being left with all of the, you know, keep getting the wages coming through and things like that. You sort of don't realize how much it would have an impact until they initially then stop.
Yeah.
In 2 months also, by the way, between that happening and then joining Centrica is not a lot of time at all to sort of take that all in, is it?
No,
Um,
I think like you say, it had to be quite a quick transition from footballer
yeah,
to apprentice, really. So I'd
yeah,
already been through my apprenticeship as a footballer, and then I was starting again. Life was starting again, and it's
yeah,
not it's not losing the houses, it's not losing the money, it's not losing the career. It's everything else that comes with it.
mm,
I lost a partner. People who you think are friends at the time when you're
hmm,
playing football, they all disappeared. I was left in a city far from my family, and I'm quite family orientated. Sounds like a sob story, but it's not really. It's just
no, no,
all these things for a young 22-year-old lad who had a lot of sort of trauma growing up through football. They all came on top of me, and that's where I couldn't really see, a sort of way out. So sort of the gambling continued. It continued all the way through my career at Centrica,
hmm,
until 2017, and it was now starting to affect my current partner Michelle, my daughter Scarlett, the whole environment within the house. And yeah, so in 2017, I basically told an intervention from parents and family that I need to speak to the PFA to try and get into a rehab centre. And luckily for me, Tony Adams, when he retired from football, who's over 26 years clean and sober now, he
hmm,
set up a rehabilitation centre down south for ex-sportsmen
hmm.
suffering with addiction, and managed to get myself in there for a month, which the Centrica were brilliant about. They told me to take the month off, get down there, get myself sorted, and supported me all the way.
That's fantastic to hear, and it's even fantastic to hear that Tony Adams has got one set up as well. But you know, before that, so when I guess like when the career ended, was there any initial help from maybe your old teams like Newcastle, your current team at the time, Nottingham? Was there any help from them or from any other people within the footballing body, sort of
Yeah,
helping you make that transition? Because it feels
uh,
like you almost sort of had to deal with it on your own shoulders.
yeah, I think, and that was the case.
Mm,
There was no help for Newcastle. There was no help from Nottingham Forest. It was, if you're at a football club, you're at a football club, and you're well looked after. If you're not sort of at a football club, you're sort of forgotten about a little bit.
mm,
Um, Times have changed since I came out the game in 2007. There's a lot more safeguarding. There's a lot more emphasis put on mental health and well-being. The FA are really tackling the stigma, and the PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, are really trying to reach out to its members, past and present,
mhm.
to deliver that service if they ever need a transitioning. I think for me personally, it was, I didn't reach out for that help. To be honest, Ed, because being an addict, you always think you can deal with it yourself,
Yeah.
and you sort of inner ego comes out, and you say, I'll get through this. I'm going to get through this. But inside, I was absolutely dying. I was literally dying. That's there's no other way to say it. So yeah, nowadays there's a lot more emphasis put on helping footballers past and present deal with the current life situation that that they find themselves in.
Good to hear that now. I can imagine now as well, there is definitely more safeguarding in the game just because of, I feel like how the 21st century moves, there's a lot more movements towards those certain aspects, and people are more willing to speak out about things rather than speaking out and then getting frowned upon, essentially. So it's absolutely fantastic to hear.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, the reason why I left obviously Newcastle in 2007 was
Yeah,
I had a falling out with the coach there.
yeah,
There was some safeguarding issues. There was some, psychological bullying, some emotional bullying, which was well publicized at the time. Unfortunately for me, that had a long-term effect on me, and really probably fueled the fire for my addiction as well. That was sort of hard to deal with, but it came, the thing that really stoked it back up again was that I came back around again. Around the time I came out of rehab in 2017, the same coach was banned from football for racial abuse to the academy members. He was actually banned from football for 9 months. So yeah, I got a little bit of vindication for the fact that in 2007 I was talking about this back then, and then it's come full circle. Unfortunately, he's managed to probably impact a lot more lads' lives coming up through the academies, but that was a little bit of vindication for me, and it goes to show that whatever improvements the FA and the PFA and the kick it out organisations are making are starting to feed down through the academies, so that can only be a good thing.
I mean, it's a really interesting point actually, because you've raised the point on sort of it being a quick end in 2007 towards the transition of 2 months to Centrica. There's no one really supporting, didn't really reach out that much to get help in the transition, but also that emotional distress that you faced at the start of your career at Newcastle, having a play as well into that transition period. So all three factors sort of coming into one almost.
And that's it. And then when I thought I dealt with that in 2008, 2009, it all came
Yeah,
full circle again in 2017 when it sort of came back up again, back into the
yeah,
papers. My name was in every single paper again in 2017, and sort of that all came back to me, and it showed me that, you know what, you haven't really dealt with this, Ross. You really need to deal with this. And at the time, I just couldn't. And then that's when I sort of transitioned from, see, the disease of addiction is quite cunning. So I transitioned from gambling, where I'm now abstinent from gambling 4 years due to the rehab, but that sort of transitioned into alcohol and substances.
on that point, you've gone through and you touched on the point of dealing with the gambling, and then going to sort of the Tony Adams Centre, which is absolutely brilliant, by the way, in 2017. So massive congratulations there. But then also what you just mentioned with the substances and the drinking. What steps going forward, or when did you start implementing steps or start being a bit more conscious about how do I push back these addictions?
Yeah, I think the seed was sort of planted in 2017 with the gambling. I hadn't really sorted out the internal turmoil, really, of what I thought was a failed football career, a failed body, and just somebody walking aimlessly through life. So yeah, it all came to a head, in on the 21st of December just last year in 2020. Again, I got to the stage of crisis point. For months, I'd been drinking a lot. I'd been using substances, shielding myself away from everybody. My life had just become completely unmanageable. And when you're an addict, when your life becomes unmanageable, I mean it becomes unmanageable. So thousands of pounds on substances, not showering, not brushing teeth, not changing underwear, urinating in bottles at the side of your bed. The unmanageability of an addict, it's in everything. Every part, every aspect of your life is just completely butchered. You just can't deal with life on life's terms. And you know what? For your family, and it's a really important point, it's horrendous. I mean,
Hmm.
to still have Michelle and Scarlett and my family by my side and actually walk the path with me, I mean, I'll just be, I'll be forever grateful for that. The strongest people that I know. So yeah, so that 21st of December, on that morning, I remember it was a Sunday morning, and the disease of addiction is, it tells you that you haven't got a disease.
Hmm.
That's the disease of addiction. If somebody tells you that they have cancer, the first reaction of somebody is empathy. can't believe this has happened to you. Are you going to get through this? What's the treatment plan? Whatever. If you tell somebody that you have the disease of addiction, naturally, to a lot of people, and the stigma that's attached to it is people on the street, crack dens, they're in dark rooms, they're all for themselves, they don't want to speak to anybody, and they're just complete nightmares. And it can't be any further from the truth. We don't want to be doing what we do. It's just we don't have any other choice. That's what our mind tells us. So coming back to that Sunday, I remember using substances on that morning, and Michelle and Scarlett she went to a swimming lesson, and Michelle came back, and I was just in floods of tears and uncontrollable to be honest. And I just said, I just can't go on anymore. I just really can't. I took the car keys and just drove for a couple of hours. I was actually dealing with somebody at work, a colleague, who was trying to help me through the situation as well. I wouldn't tell anybody where I was, and I actually ended up on the cliffs in Sunderland on the coast. And I was just standing on top of the cliffs, and I'm just thinking, this is it. This is your moment. This is your time to do it. And I was there. Do you know what I mean? I was definitely there. It was only thanks to Michelle for quick thinking, a colleague, Eccentrica, who I'll be grateful for forever as well, and the crisis team, the NHS, that I managed to step back, and that's when I started my full recovery, not just from gambling, but from substances and alcohol. The next day, I went to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting, CA for short, exactly the same as like Alcoholics Anonymous or Gamblers Anonymous. They sort of had the same structure. They have the 12 steps of recovery, and it's a design for living. And I did them meetings all week. Found myself a sponsor who was in long-term sobriety, who could take me through the work. And since the 21st December last year, I haven't took a substance or drunk since. So we're nearly up to 11 months now, and I'm under no illusions that this is my life now. Do you know what I mean? I can't take a drink. I can't take a substance, because I have catastrophic consequences to those actions. I never know when I'm gonna get home. I don't know when it's gonna end. So I have to just sort of live for that 24 hours and get through that 24-hour period. Don't get me wrong, it's not all doom and gloom. Recovery is a beautiful thing, and the people that I've met through this journey, and we're making loads of memories, and I just don't miss it at all. I just do not miss that life, but I just know that this is me for the rest of the life. I have to do the things that I'm doing, and everything's going to be okay.
It seems as though, I know you've got a bit of saying to live life on life's terms, and I feel like from what you're saying now, to do that, which is unbelievable to hear.
Thanks, Ed. And like I said, it's good for me, and it's fantastic. And the addicts usually get a lot of the praise and stuff like that, but you know what? It's the family, it's Michelle, it's Scarlett, it's the people around me who need all that thanks and all that support, because they've had to live through it. I'm just an example of following a program, but they've had to deal with all the sort of heartache, the suicide attempts, the not knowing where I am. So like I say, I'm just forever grateful who's been a part of my journey.
Yeah, absolutely. The resilience that you've shown there as well is absolutely fantastic, and I feel like you're literally better placed than anyone in the world to share your experience and knowledge around this topic. So thank you very much yet again. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Thank you.
On that, I guess I know you've touched on very heavily actually having the people around you, the right people around you, the right support, really helps sort of pushing back this, I guess, this addictive personality around, drinking and substances and things like this. So is this the main piece of advice that you would give for someone who could be listening, going through a similar experience?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing that you can ever do is tell somebody what you're really going through, whether that's a trusted colleague, a trusted friend. We have a lot of services here at Centrica. If you ring our services, healthcare RM, like My Health and My Care, you're going to get the help. I've got to say with 100% commitment that if you ring these lines, if you navigate this journey with Centrica on board, they'll be there to help you. The flexibility to be able to get through this addiction and keep me in recovery. And I just want people to have the confidence to use them channels, sorry, to come forward. That's the biggest thing for me, is to get that awareness out there. And if you've got a problem, please speak up, please reach out to somebody. And what you get back in return is, like I say, it's beyond your wildest dreams, and we can get you to the place where I am at today. That's my advice. Use the channels and just reach out.
Just to reiterate, I guess what you said before around having an addictive personality, and one of the worst things about having an addiction is the fact that you feel like you can just deal with it yourself. The most underrated thing to do is to just speak up.
Of course, and it is a good saying: a problem shared is a problem halved. And
Exactly.
the biggest thing, if you can, that is the biggest step, and it is with any addiction or any problem, any mental health problem that we have, is making that first contact.
Now moving, from so that's a really interesting side and really interesting insight into your life, Ross, and it just sort of demonstrates to everyone listening and myself how resilient you have been and the people around you have been as well. And it's
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic to hear. So I guess now I sort of wanted to dive into what your interest in neurodiversity was, and whether, these experiences that you've gone through is the reason that you may have got into a bigger interest in it.
I love everything neurodiversity. I helped set up the UKFO Wellbeing Network Advocates with Keza Ashimo, Kai Fernandez Harrison, and JJ Besley, just for the field, just before the pandemic started, because we didn't really have something in place for people in the field, and it's quite difficult to navigate the field in terms of mental health. A lady by the name of Rebecca Fernandez joined
Yeah.
the Wellbeing Network, and Rebecca's just absolutely brilliant. And she started talking about neurodiversity and our two sons, actually, and it was really humbling to listen to the story, everything that she was doing. And I just had a vested interest since then. I started looking back through younger periods of my life when I was at school and thinking, that kid that I thought was a class clown, and that one that was, making lots of noise and stuff like that, they were just people who were disruptive. And since speaking to Rebecca and doing a lot of research into neurodiversity, I understand now they just didn't have the right environment to learn and grow in.
Mm.
And this is why I just love it so much.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things with neurodiversity, it's really interesting, is once you can almost pick apart a room when you understand how people think differently.
Yeah,
And it's first of all understanding how people think differently, but also why they think differently. I think a lot of times, when there's a room full of people who perhaps aren't neurodiverse, and there's 3, 4, 5, whatever, people often don't think too much about it. They just sort of go straight to the first opinion and
of
then
course.
leave it there. But it's really interesting, isn't it, when you go into neurodiversity a bit more, and then, like you say, you look back and then you can almost pick apart a classroom.
Oh yeah, you can. You totally can. And I actually went back, and there was two people who I thought were just just being disruptive, and I've found them within the last couple of years. One's a managing director of one company, and the other one's working for Microsoft in
Yeah.
technology. And it was just like, wow, from the difference from being at school to the difference now. And people with neurodiversity diagnosis, ADHD, a lot of
Mm.
people will not know that how creative they are, how hyper focused they are, the energy and passion that they got. We sort of dial into the negatives, we don't dial into the positives, but it's up to us as individuals to educate people about neurodiversity, and especially in the workplace, become flexible and give people with neurodiversity the environment to grow and to give the best of themselves. And that's what I just love about it. It's just, I'm so passionate about it. I've actually got a cousin who's ADHD and has autism as well. And the relationship now with my cousin that I've got, only since speaking to Rebecca, has just grown massively. And I just absolutely love it.
It's interesting that you bring back the case of Microsoft as well, because so they're doing a scheme recruiting for neurodiverse individuals, which is absolutely fantastic.
That's the thing though. We have an obligation as a big company to deliver these environments, because let's be honest about it. People who have ADHD, autism, even Tourette syndrome, dyslexia. There's genius minds in there. We've just got to make sure that we give them the help and support to help them with the stuff that sort of struggle with on a daily basis. And if we can do that as a company, we are only going to benefit from that.
On this topic of neurodiversity then, do you have any aims to raise awareness around the topic in general? Because I know you mentioned the well-being stuff that you set up in the field, as well as sort of Rebecca getting involved in that as well. You guys got any sort of aims in raising awareness?
Of course, we will be in contact with Rebecca every year. We'll be helping Rebecca as much as possible to raise the awareness through our channels, as she will do in our own channels. But I've sort of took it away from the company as well, so I get involved with all the stuff within the company, but now in my own community, I can link it to addiction as well. So we have addicts who suffer with ADHD, autism. It's a really general mix up in the northeast. So I'm finding that I'm doing a lot of work in recovery centres and talks, and the feedback that I've got with other recovering addicts and people who suffer with neurodiversity on the spectrum. Sorry, we have some open and honest conversations. So we're just going to continue to grow that, keep having safe environments, safe spaces to understand each other. And that's my aim, is just to keep the awareness going through any channel that we can, and just be a supportive ally of Rebecca and everything she's doing at Centrica and the Diverse Ability Network. We just want to be massive allies of that.
But I mean, on the note of the spreading awareness at some of the centres that you've taught at and gave workshops at, are you finding a lot of addicts who come in are neurodiverse, or is it just sort of like a small proportion of?
I think it's a small proportion
Okay.
of the groups, but we do have people on that spectrum, and some of the best conversations I've had, and some of the collaborative stuff that we've done in the communities has just been amazing. I mean, my education on neurodiversity over the past 12 to 18 months has just absolutely rocketed. And I can see where in society we struggle to provide that environment and provide that flexibility to support people. And that's something within the recovery centres and the computer centres that we meet at. We are trying to instill an environment where everybody can succeed.
Thank you very much for that, Ross. Absolutely brilliant. So I guess for people going through similar scenarios and want to look at other sources for support, I know you've mentioned a few previously, but is there any more that you'd recommend or want to sort of double reiterate?
Yeah, with addiction and substances and alcohol, you've got Alcoholics Anonymous, you've got CA, which is Cocaine Anonymous. Again, just another branch of the 12-step recovery. You've got Gamblers Anonymous, you've got Narcotics Anonymous. Loads and loads of support networks out there, meetings that you can attend locally. In terms of within the business, speak to the people that are really making people aware of these and trying to destigmatize addiction, neurodiversity. So get in touch with Rebecca. She would love to hear from people who want to know a little bit more about it. Speak to me, reach out if you're struggling with addiction. I'll walk the path with you and help you as much as I can. Make use of our My Health and My Care, and make use of Yammer and the My Wellbeing pages. There's the information is there. It's just trying to make that switch, and it's the most difficult switch to make to go out and find that. But there's loads of support out there. Just please just reach out.
So please do reach out to Ross, Rebecca, if or any of the sources that Ross has just mentioned, if you are in need of support. But brilliant, Ross, thank you so much. It's been a massive privilege, and I couldn't be more grateful to dive into what you discussed today. So thank you very much. And quick note, congratulations ahead of time for the 21st of December.
Thank you, Ed. Well, I'm just
No worries.
I cake every day as I can, so I'll just keep ticking the days off. But like I say, hopefully I'll get there. But thanks very much, Ed. It's been an
No,
absolute
it's been
pleasure
an absolute pleasure
to
having
join
you
the
on, and I hope
podcast.
everyone has enjoyed listening because I definitely have. And just to reiterate again, if anything Ross has discussed today resonates in somewhat way with yourself, then please do reach out. Ross, Rebecca, any of the sources that you mentioned, just please do reach out and try and get that support. But as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Until next time.